This is the Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show here on the New Horizon Radio.
Welcome to the Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show here on the New Horizon. A little bit about me. Mum to two wonderful sons. My eldest is a videographer and an estate agent, and the other is in a boy band. I'm a summer baby, but actually born in December, which in Zimbabwe is our summer. So I love the summer, hate the cold, and I'm learning to love vintage again. On today's show, one of the most beautiful films I've seen in ages, The Penguin Lessons, The Apprentice Final, being sent off to boarding school when I was 10, and the documentary Dancing Back to the Light. And my guest is Linny Lane Chocolatier. And it was The Apprentice Final. 12 long weeks. Lord Sugar finally awarded his £250,000 investment to Dean Franklin, the founder of air conditioning company Domesticool, which I thought rhymed with testicle personally, but anyway, that's what he went with. And despite Anissa Khan's innovative Indian-Italian fusion pizzas really impressing him, and her amazing pitch, I think, was literally pitch perfect, Alan Sugar chose Dean Franklin. But his charisma and business potential tipped the scales in the favour, but I really, really thought she would win. Her pitch was, as I say, absolutely outstanding. And also Dean, during his pitch to industry experts, walked off the stage before he had actually done a Q&A. So I was like, oh my God. But anyway, obviously, that was okay because Lord Sugar, has awarded him the money. And I just thought aircon was pretty boring compared to pizza, but what do I know? I'm not a businessman. So as I say, the show adhered to the classic formula with the returning candidates, which I always find a bit cringe because if they've not got on, they're sort of coming back and they're helping them and they're pretending they're best buds and everything. So I do find that a little bit awkward, but it seemed to work really well. And they genuinely were behind both candidates, really, really wanting to make it work. So Dean's pitch included a virtual showroom and a catchy Daddy Cool theme, and Anissa showcased her Zal pizzas with a football-themed advert. I think if Dean had targeted menopausal women like me who are always hot, he would have, he obviously did win, but I think if the advert had targeted menopausal women, I think it would have done so much better anyway. That would have been half his target market. But say the final structure felt very familiar with a sort of blend of competition and camaraderie. And say the decision to invest in Dean, I think, seemed quite fair. But I would say both finalists were deserving of this investment. And who do you think you are is going to be replacing The Apprentice, which I am quite intrigued because there's some really interesting characters on there. So I may or may not be reviewing this. Watch the space. And last week, I saw the most beautiful film at Cineworld MK. Honestly, I haven't seen a film like this in a very long time. It's called The Penguin Lessons, and it stars Steve Coogan. It's a heartwarming and comedic drama based on the true story of Tom Mischel, an English teacher who becomes unexpectedly entwined with a penguin in 1970s Argentina. And it's set against the sort of backdrop of very difficult, turbulent political times where, there was a revolution at sort of at every, there was a coup threatened at every minute. So really, really tense times. But when Tom, played by Coogan, finds a penguin stranded on a beach during a trip to the country, he takes the animal back to the prestigious boarding school where he's teaching boys to speak English as a mascot, and he becomes an unlikely school mascot. But the penguin actually becomes a metaphor for so many things, and it's really, really clever. And as I say, it explores themes of personal growth, healing, and the profound impact of compassion, whilst also capturing the cultural tensions of Argentina during a very, very turbulent time. What I didn't know is that during this cultural revolution, people who opposed the government were actually just taken away. They disappeared, and they're actually known as the disappeared. And to this day, I think there's something like 30,000 people who are unaccounted for, who were taken away and never seen again. And that was really interesting historically for me as well. But through the humorous and often touching moments between Tom and his students and the penguin, this film highlights how the most unexpected relationships can inspire and bring joy. And honestly, it was one of the most touching movies I have ever seen. And when you go to the cinema or the theatre or anything and you've got low expectations, I hadn't looked at the reviews. I wanted to go with an open mind. It really, really was utterly, utterly heartwarming. I'm a really big fan of Steve Coogan, and these are words I never thought I would ever utter. I was not a fan of Alan Partridge at all. That I just found the whole thing really cringe, and I know that's how he was supposed to be. But as an actor, he's an extraordinary actor, very, very versatile. He was absolutely brilliant in Philomena. He was also Stan Laurel in Stan and Ollie, and his uncanny portrayal of Laurel it won him a BAFTA nomination. It was absolutely amazing. Physically, the physicality of the role as well. I think as an actor, it's not just about being technically brilliant, it's about the physicality, and he absolutely embodied Stan Laurel, he really did. And also the scarily but horrific portrayal of Jimmy Savile in The Reckoning. Again, very uncomfortable viewing, but again, you forgot that it was Steve Coogan, and you really did feel like you were watching Jimmy Savile. So, and again, he was nominated for a BAFTA for that performance. It really was extraordinary. But he's an amazing actor, and it's interesting watching him work with this penguin, because it is not a CGI penguin. It's actually, there were two penguins that were used to do the film. And he said afterwards, when I've watched interviews, he said that he didn't, he had to accept that he was being usurped by this wonderful little bird who, everybody absolutely fell in love with. But the film is about both of them, and it's about their journey. And the fact that it's both based on his Tom Mitchell's memoirs, that it's a true story, just made it so special. And as I say, really funny, touching, warm, poignant, and an unexpected joy. And I would really, really recommend the Penguin Lessons, which is on at Cineworld Milton Keynes. And since watching Matthew Bourne's Swan Lake last week, I've become absolutely obsessed with male ballet dancers, and not in a weird kind of way, just their stories. And I think I was so impressed with the athleticism of the dancers in Swan Lake. I just wanted to find out more about what makes a male ballet dancer tick. So I was listening to a podcast with Carlos Acosta, whose life story, coming from Cuba, coming to the UK, and becoming one of the greatest male ballet dancers ever, is inspiring in itself. But I actually discovered this little gem of a documentary on iPlayer, actually, and it's called Dancing Back to the Light, and it's featuring the principal dancer of the Royal Ballet, and that's Steven McRae. I'd never heard of him, actually. I mean, I can't profess to being a massive ballet fan, but I've become a little bit obsessed. And when I get the bit between my teeth, I will do all my research and find out and look into about the subject that I'm really interested in. So he was, or is still, principal dancer at the Royal Ballet, and he'd come over from Australia when he was very young, and he'd had this incredible career dancing in sort of the Nutcracker, Swan Lake, Romeo and Juliet. But during one of his performances, he snapped his Achilles tendon in front of 2,500 people on stage, and it was the most agonizing thing he's ever been through. But it happened twice, but this particular time it happened on stage in front of, say, all these people, and you cannot imagine the pain. But the pain that doesn't compare to the pain that he went through afterwards, because he couldn't dance, he couldn't even walk, he had to learn to walk again. But the documentary is really interesting because it's about behind the scenes, because when we go and watch the ballet or any performance, we just see we see 2 or 3 hours of dancing, and we know it's physical and we know it's amazing and they're creating magic on stage. But what you don't see is the behind the scenes, and how he was put back together with a team of physios and Pilates and going to the gym. And he was interesting because he'd sort of said before his accident, as a ballet dancer, he just wanted to dance every single role, didn't eat very well, had a very unhealthy lifestyle. And since the accident, he goes to the gym, as I say, he does reformer Pilates, and he's got this massive, incredible team of physios behind him. And he did have an operation to sort out the Achilles tendon, which looked so horrendous. I couldn't even watch that bit. I mean, I'm not squeamish, but it was nasty. But again, this amazing team putting him back together, and his rehabilitation to get back on stage. And it took such a long time, and it's an amazing journey. And also his kids and his wife are involved, and she was also a soloist in the Royal Ballet, and she'd given up her career to have 3 children. And it was interesting because you could see a bit of her journey as well, that she missed dancing terribly, but she knows she's made the right decision to have 3 children, and they have this wonderful family life. But obviously he couldn't dance, and it's the impact on them as a family, which again, as performers, you don't think about the impact of injury on the family. It was really, really interesting. But as I say, it was about how they put him back together and his sheer grit and determination to get back on stage. And honestly, it's heartwarming. And as I say, they are sportsmen. And he sort of said, are we artists or athletes? I believe we artists have to behave like athletes. He's still dancing at the age of 39 and is nicknamed the Fred Astaire of the ballet world. For all ballet lovers, this is really worth a watch. And as promised, I'm carrying on with my life story. So this is part 3. Let's paint the picture. Picture me, just 10 years old, going off to boarding school. So leaving the familiar sights and sounds of home, setting off on an adventure and a boarding school back in Rhodesia during the Bush War. Difficult times. So it's the mid-1970s, and I know I'm dating myself here, and the country is caught up in a brutal civil conflict. The air was thick with tension and uncertainty. And as a child, you kind of just accept it. That's the weird thing about living in a war zone. You just accept it because it's the norm. I'd never known differently. I was born when the war was on, and, this carried on through sort of most of my childhood. So again, you just accept. But for a 10-year-old, it's a strange mix of excitement and fear. And the whole world actually feels like it's teetering between childhood innocence and something far darker. But my dad drove me all the way to boarding school in his beautifully restored Riley car, a just beautiful old car. And I remember the smell of the leather seats and the walnut dashboard. And I remember on the radio, they were playing Jet Plane. There was a song, Jet Plane, flying high above me. And I remember that. And it's crazy the things you remember. That particular song just really sort of takes me back to my 10-year-old self. But the drive was sort of really, really long and bumpy and sort of carrying me further away from home. And again, sort of, I was excited, but really, really nervous as well. And there's something very surreal about it. The South African and Rhodesian military convoys are visible in the distance. And occasionally I could hear the low sort of hum of planes and helicopters because, at any point, we could have been struck in our car. That's how, that's the reality of life in a bush war. So that was kind of weird because I'm going on this journey in this car with my dad to a life that I had no idea what was going to be there. And 10 is very young, actually. And I'll go into the reasons why I was sent away to boarding school another time, because that's a whole other thing. But the traveling for me was about that time, that special time with my dad in the car, looking at the landscape, but also sort of thinking, these helicopters and aeroplanes overhead, thinking, what could happen? But it's quite exciting when you're 10. You don't realize actually it's really, really dangerous. But the next time I traveled to school was in an armor-plated vehicle. And I know nobody believes this. And I'm going to put a picture on my socials, actually, of this crazy vehicle that I used to travel to school in. My kids didn't believe it. And I showed them a picture. And it's called a Crocodile. And it literally is this massive armor-plated vehicle, which was part of the sort of anti-personnel device carriers. And it was huge. I mean, honestly, there's a picture. I haven't got that picture, unfortunately, but the wheels are, I don't know, they must be 10 feet tall, and I'm this child of 10 just standing up. But again, it was so exciting. I mean, what child goes to school in an armor-plated vehicle? It was absolutely insane. And also, so if we didn't travel in the Crocodile, which again was very exciting when you're 10, we had to travel in convoy again because that was the safest way of traveling. So crazy times. So just getting to school in itself was really, really interesting. And as I say, when I talk to my children about my upbringing and the fact that I went off to school in a war zone, they just shake their heads in utter disbelief. But you just do it. It's exciting. But afterwards, as an adult, you look back and think those were crazy times. But I will talk next week a little bit about actually how I felt when I got to school and how I settled in on my first night, or rather didn't. Anyway, stay tuned because I'm going to be talking to the wonderful Linny Lane, who's a chocolatier, and my mouth is absolutely watering at the prospect. Linny trained in hospitality and started her company primarily as a pastry chef. She travelled extensively and ended up living in Germany, France and Switzerland, and it was in Geneva that she sidestepped into the chocolate world and became head chocolatier. Welcome, Linny.
Thank you, Nancy. Thanks for having me.
So excited. I've never met a chocolatier before, and we've got actual chocolates in the studio, so I can't promise how long they're going to last, but we'll have a little bit of a tasting session in a bit. But I've tasted your amazing chocolates. They are utterly divine. So
thank you.
An incredible little business that you've created. But tell us about your time in Venezuela, because that's where it all started, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. So after I was 3 or 4 years in Geneva as a chocolatier, and that was a very busy place to work. We had about a dozen shops and we grew them each year kind of thing. So after leaving there, I wanted to come back to the UK. But I wanted to take some time out. It'd been such a full-on time, and leaving a country, there's a lot to organise and to do and everything. So I just felt I wanted to give myself some time and go and explore. And I'd always been interested in the background of chocolate, not just the end product as I make. So I wanted to find a cocoa plantation and invite myself along to see how it actually worked. And a couple of the jobs that I went for in London, one of them said to me, I know someone who's got a plantation in Venezuela. I'll put you in touch, go and have a chat. So I phoned up Willie of Willie's Cacao, and he said, come, you'll be in time for harvest. Come and stay as long as you like. So I stayed a month, and it was just incredible. Literally in the cloud forest in Venezuela. I was picked up late at night in Caracas in a taxi, 3 hours driving in the dark, met this Jeep with, I can't actually remember his name, but one of the farm manager that met me at the side of the road. It's like this youngish, 30-something crazy girl. Drove a mile through the forest in this 4-wheel drive through a river and up the other side, and met Willie sitting very coolly on this terrace with a beer. And and then we got to the next day. The weeks unravelled, and the Willie's interest was turning his cocoa obviously into a finished chocolate product, which since he's been doing for many years. He has a place down in Devon, and but that was the real start, was how to take his raw cocoa, which he was simply grinding in a meat grinder in the back of his kitchen and selling it to locals. And he wanted to get that obviously into an international product. I was there right at the beginning. So it was very exciting.
That's an amazing story. So you were there creating his first chocolate bars.
Yeah, we literally did it. So we had times where we needed cocoa butter. We hadn't got the equipment to use. So we went off to Caracas. Willie went one day on his own and came back, and he was all very joyful that got the cocoa butter. And I took one look at it, and it was as white as my boxes, Nancy, a clear white. I just said to him, "What's that?" And he said, "It's cocoa butter." And I was like, "No, that's some animal fat." And we smelt it, and that was that. So back we went together, and all the excitement of Caracas, and so with all of these things and finding the sugar levels, I phoned some colleagues in Geneva to get a little bit of am I saying the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? And and we literally created in little Tupperware boxes, I seem to remember, the very first bars. We imprinted them with cocoa leaves on the top and foiled them, and it was just really, it was still a very raw product, because the chocolate, for it to be as we know it, nice and smooth, has to go through so many processes, and it needs to come down to around 30 microns, and so we got that nice feel in the mouth, that smoothness.
Smooth, yes.
So this was obviously still very raw, and had a real texture to it and a little bit of a crunch. But we managed to temper it in a really hot environment outside, and got it to work. And it was, just, as I say, exciting.
And how was it sort of tasting that having a taste of your first chocolate bar? I mean, that must have been utterly mind-blowing.
Yeah, and I think the really interesting tastes for me were actually, it was one of the first times that I'd come across cocoa in its real natural state, not just nibs. So here in the UK, we can easily get cocoa nibs, and cocoa beans and cocoa nibs. The nib is the part of the bean that's been shelled. But to have the actual cocoa with its in its raw state, with the pulp, each cocoa bean is covered in like a jelly. I don't know if you've ever seen one, Nancy.
No, so interesting.
So when they're opened up, it's this jelly that surrounds the bean, and that gets scooped out of the pods, put into big fermenting containers, covered with banana leaves, and they're left to ferment, a little bit like a wine process, similar kind of thing. Okay. And for around about 7 to 10 days, so different places do different times and processes. And that jelly pulp drains away from the cocoa beans, and then the beans are put out onto sun terraces, and they're dried, and then they go through the roasting, and etc., etc. So it's such a long process, which is why chocolate has its price tag as well.
Well, good chocolate. Yes,
exactly,
yes.
good chocolate.
Yeah,
yes.
and we obviously will talk about
Absolutely.
the difference between good and bad chocolate, because unfortunately there's a lot of bad chocolate. Although it does taste so good, it's not very good for you. But yeah, we'll talk a little bit about when you came back to the UK and joining the Chocolate Society, because the whole thing, the Chocolate Society, just sounds too exciting. How do you pronounce? Is it chocolatier? How do you pronounce it?
Yeah, chocolatier.
Chocolatier.
Yeah.
Tier.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tier.
I wasn't doing it.
So it has an E for ladies, which is why my business name has an E on the end. But primarily it's a masculine word, chocolatier, which has no E. So yes.
Okay, interesting. So when you came back to the UK, I mean, you've been away 15 years, and then you joined the Chocolate Society. That just sounds so exciting in itself. Tell us what the Chocolate Society actually is.
So the Chocolate Society was set up by a couple of people. Alan Porter was one of them, and Chantal Cody, who then ran Rococo. And they were primarily one of very few chocolate businesses in London at that time, in the 90s, 2000s. And Alan Porter was very well known within the fine food industry. And he'd decided that, the British chocolate wasn't what it could be. We weren't eating chocolate like they did on the continent. And so he was one of the first importers of high quality brands such as Valrhona to the UK. And so they called it the Chocolate Society. To be honest, I'm not even quite sure that I actually ever knew why it was called that, but it is an exciting name, isn't it? And there was like a membership club, so a little bit like Hotel Chocolat back in the days. So it was all sorts of things, but they had 2 retail shops in London, and then also supplied all the high-end shops, so Harrods, Harvey Nichols, Selfridges, all of the big hotels, the Ritz, the Dorchester. So businesses that I'd kind of been involved in when I trained. Initially when I trained for a short amount of time at the Ritz in London. So that was fascinating. I was then supplying them and trotting down the road with last minute orders that they had ordered from our base in Mayfair, which was in Shepherd Market. So I was based there. We had a basement kitchen, and we had cafes in the shop. So one in Elizabeth Street in Belgravia, and the other one in Mayfair. And they were beautiful, very high end, very prestigious. We used to have lots of celebs coming in, and it was just a lovely place to work. But my job was very mixed. So I managed that shop, oversaw the Belgravia shop, and their manager, but was also in charge of new product development. We had a factory up in Yorkshire. My boss lived in Devon, so we were a real triangle, and I was kind of like his right arm. But because I had the chocolatier and the artistic side, we also launched things like bespoke chocolate sculptures, so which could be from anything from this size to floor to ceiling size. So things when there were maybe a film launch, we'd get involved in that. A new store being opened. When Whole Foods came to London, I did a big chocolate sculpture of the Barker building. I'm trying to think, there was a theatre thing, I can't think of it.
But the BAFTAs do things like that.
Exactly, yes, all sorts of things. So we got involved in lots of things, art exhibitions, and I did a little food, art sculpture, chocolate sculptures in art galleries and things. And then, quite high profile people would come along, maybe they'd want one. And so it was very bespoke kind of service that we get. So from being a manager in a suit in a shop one day, I would then be down in the kitchen creating things like that. So it was very varied. And then products for our shops and online. So I had a real mixed bag of jobs that I did.
But what a great way to learn on the job.
Absolutely. That was very varied and kind of set me up for my own business in a way of seeing different areas, retail, customer service. Yeah, absolutely. Merchandising, very important. Aesthetics. Just how you want a product to look. It's not just about the taste. Obviously, the taste is really important, but the first thing to capture your audience is it's got to look stylish and chic, in my opinion.
No, absolutely. And the thing is, what we see is as consumers is the end product. And I was just talking earlier about ballet dancers and how much training they do. We don't see all that, the behind the scenes, the training and the injuries and the physio and everything that they have to do. They go out and they do this amazing performance on stage. And it's the same as you know, you're creating this beautiful sculpture or chocolate, or but it's all the behind the scenes that we don't see. The blood, sweat and tears, the logistics, probably if you had a power failure, there's probably a million things that you've probably had to
Absolutely.
experience. But how, if you're creating a massive sculpture, how does that work in terms of melting? Because obviously time
Heat.
is of the element,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Nerves of steel is one of the things. It's always quite good. When I was in Geneva, we used to have to dress our windows. We had very big shop windows, particularly in one of the stores on the main drag. And transport was always a nightmare. It usually entailed 2 people in the back of a van. Doesn't sound very glamorous at all. Holding it and kind of, praying for the roundabouts and shouting out orders to the drivers.
They would have done terribly in Milton Keynes with all the roundabouts, wouldn't
absolutely.
Oh,
But you need space, and it is all about time and temperature with chocolate. It's it's not something that you can rush when you're working with it. Obviously you need to have air conditioning and very large fridges.
But it must be so wonderful, having that idea in your head. Maybe that I guess you sketched it and then you knew what you wanted to look like. So from inception to completion, that must have been so satisfying.
Yeah. There's lots of stages that go along, and I'm actually not a very good drawer, so my sketches are usually dreadful. But getting what's in my head down, and then there is because chocolate contracts. So you have to take that. So you do become a little bit architectural at the same time. I remember once in Geneva, we made a huge helicopter, larger than your table. It weighed
As you
around
do.
about, It was for somebody's 30th birthday, and I think she was being bought an actual helicopter. So this was a token, and but it was a several weeks project alongside all of our other work. And when we did move that, we had to move it to the customer's house. And after a couple of days, they phoned us up and said the tail had broken off because the sun had been shining in on one particular spot. So we had to go out and do some repair the tail end. That's
good Lord, just don't think about these things.
No, absolutely.
Gosh, and obviously we'll talk next about how you set up Linny Lane, but your name in itself is just amazing. Tell me about the name, because I love your name. I love alliteration.
So my name is my married name, and when I first set up, or started to dabble, because it was all quite a slow process to start off with. I wasn't sure whether I was going to have a business or not a business. I hadn't really thought about a business as such. And I called myself the Chocolatier, and I just thought, it's a bit corporate. There's other people out there that are called the Chocolatier. That shouldn't be that. And I just said, why don't I just use my name? Other people have done it, so why not? And it's got a bit of a ring to it. I'd either be a luxurious chocolate maker or something a little bit more sinister. So there we go. We kind of fell on the name, and I like the pink for the L as the LL, so just the one L, and and that was it. It just kind of all fell into place, and it trips off the tongue. I think it's quite memorable for people, like you say. I often get commented on it, but the Linny actually comes from when I was really young, because I was very skinny when I was little, and everyone used to call me Skinny Linny. And then when I moved to Geneva, friends of my sister's, I went through a moment of losing a lot of weight, and one of my sister's friends, he picked it up and said, Skinny Linny. And I was like, I used to be called that when I was a kid. And so everyone was calling me Linny. I wasn't Lane then, I was Cadeau, because I married a Frenchman the first time round.
As you say, it trips off the tongue beautifully. But the thing is about setting up a business, and it was the same as when I was setting up my show. It's like, what do I want to call it? Because sometimes you might think it feels a bit narcissistic sometimes, like, it's my name and it's all about me. But, we are our brand, people know you as Linny, like people know me as Nancy Stevens. So I thought, I could come up with a fancy name, but, ultimately it's...
Yeah.
Our names are who we are. It's our business, and it's actually go with it. And the people remember that.
They do.
They wouldn't necessarily remember, the chocolatier, as you say, that's to a penny. Or I've had other shows which probably the name wasn't amazing because I didn't feel necessarily comfortable about having my name above above the door, so to speak, with my name in lights. But actually, it's us.
It's just me. Yeah. So I kind of thought, well, wear my heart on my sleeve. It's me. And when I do meet people, not within the chocolate kind of domain, locally, and people go, you're the chocolate lady. And so it's kind of like, so I have the two that kind of go together. It's that, Linny Lane, we remember that name. So and must be the alliteration.
Absolutely. And obviously it was a lifestyle change for you as a mum. So, has it worked in terms of juggling?
Yeah, I think so. Primarily, there's busy periods, which then the juggle is just, there's no more juggling. It's just all balls in the air. But yeah, I'm able to take the school holidays off. My son now is 17, so I don't need much time off of work really, because he doesn't need me anymore. But apart from the taxi. But yes, I have been able to work my own diary, and that flexibility has been lovely to be able to have that and say yes or no. The no's are always harder to actually implement, but having that option has been great. Yeah.
And so obviously it was set up, the business was sort of set up as a workshop and party business, but obviously you've diversified and gone back to your sort of craft of chocolate making, obviously, because you had this chocolate store at Woburn Sands Market and Chocolate Box of the Month, which I've been lucky enough to be the recipient of. And you've obviously got several chocolate products, sort of Great Taste Award winners. That's obviously what's worked really, really well for you then. Yeah,
exactly. So my idea initially was just workshops and parties, and that came about because I went to a venue who were hosting something with chocolate. And when I asked them about what they were doing, they weren't too sure and asked me then lots of questions, because I said, I'm only interested, I'm a chocolatier down the road. And they nearly bit my arm off. So I ran their first event, and I kind of thought, something in this. So I started running them at different venues, and then thought, actually, I'm just going to do it on my own and not do it in partnership with anybody. There's no need. So that grew. And then, of course, after some years, so the market existed in Woburn Sands, but there was only 4 a year. And I thought it would be a good place for me to market my workshops and parties. So I took literally 3 products up, small selection of 6 chocolates, some candied oranges and some dark chocolate truffles. And a friend of mine said to me, I'll come and help. And I said, it'll be fine. I don't think we'll need you. I've got Aidan, it'll be fine. And they queued around the table, it just flew out. And we were packing because I just underestimated people's interest and how popular it's going to be. So over the years, it just grew and grew. And of course, COVID came. I jumped on board with the market and became chair of the market, because unfortunately the man who set it up sadly passed away very suddenly. And so I always thought it was very important that stallholders take an interest in the market. So I had to put my money where my mouth was. And then the market grew within COVID, funnily enough, because we had all those lockdowns, lock in and outs, didn't we?
Gosh.
Horrendous.
In, out, shake it all about. It was very stressful, wasn't it?
And some businesses were able to trade and others weren't. And mine being one, food, was able to trade. And the market, we decided to take it from, we'd gone from quarterly to bi-monthly and then monthly. And so it seemed logical for me, because a lot of my events couldn't happen. So I was like, I'm going to create a box of the month. And it was kind of a matter of, I created it based on flavours that were seasonal. And then come and get it. I'm here. I'm only here. Come and get it. When it's gone, it's gone. And it usually would sell out on the day. It'd be very rare for it not to sell out on the day. 100 boxes, come and go. And so that's how I kind of worked.
Incredible success story, and we're going to have a little tasting session now. I'm very excited. So you have your chocolate box of the month, which I've been lucky enough, as I say, to be the recipient of. Would you like to do the reveal?
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
I think it's all about the aesthetics, isn't it?
Yeah, so this is a 16 chocolate box. So I do different sizes. It comes in a 10, 16 chocolate and a 25 chocolates. Fingers and thumbs. So when it arrives, comes like this. So you get an assortment of what's known as the bonbons. So here I've got a double caramel. It's a blonde chocolate. It's got 2 layers in there, a ganache and a salted caramel. Lemon meringue. This is a lemon curd, white chocolate, lemon ganache and a mallow. This is a hazelnut praline, caramelised hazelnut with a praline ganache. And this is coffee martini. It has a vodka caramel with a coffee ganache. I've got here dark chili. That's just a dark chili ganache in there. And my chocolate orange. So instead of Terry's chocolate orange, it's a Linny chocolate orange. These are my passion fruit truffles. These are very zingy and have a nice acidity to them. And this is salted caramel. So these are my 2 of my Great Taste Award winners. So the caramels go in every monthly box, because I feel I took them out once and I had so many messages saying, why have you not put the caramels in? So so they always go in. So there we are. So can I tempt you, Nancy?
Oh, of course. No persuasion. No persuasion needed.
So I think you like the
lemon meringue.
That's the lemon.
Oh my god! How do you get the glaze on them?
So the colour is tempered cocoa butter.
Yeah.
And I like to use non-azo colours. So primarily natural colours. So even though on the ingredients label is always on the back of my boxes.
Yeah.
I can show you on this small one here, which gives you the date and the weight and the best before and all the ingredients as you're legally required to do. But the E numbers that may be on there, even if they're a natural colour, it's still classed as an E number. How's that going down?
It's so divine. I mean, I love lemon meringue and I love chocolate, so.
Yeah. A lot of people say to me they don't like fruity chocolates, and then they taste mine. And it's always so nice to be able to convert somebody. And equally, dark chocolate is the same. I have a lot of people, some will say, oh, I don't like dark chocolate. And I'm like, but do you like a real dark chocolate? And yeah, there's a difference. Quality is really important to me. My ingredients that I use, always fresh. And my boxes, they have a shelf life which tends to be, I recommend, around about 4 weeks. It's always best to get them as soon as you get them. It's always best to tuck in. Don't leave them to the last.
Needed there.
Yeah.
Honestly, mine were gone within the whole box was gone within 24 hours. So my sons and I devoured them, and my youngest worked at Hotel Chocolat, so he sort of
had an interest.
Yeah, and he only likes dark chocolate, so we were just blown away. And I love the fact that because they're quite rich, you don't need a lot of them. Whereas we were talking about bad chocolate earlier, you can just gorge on no disrespect to Cadbury's or anything, you can just eat a whole one of those but feel really sick. But with good chocolate, you don't need a lot. And that's less is more, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think sometimes the sugar aspect in chocolate, and that's one of the things that I talk to children about when I go into schools, is trying to give them different options and different tastes. And a lot of children obviously haven't been exposed to dark chocolate because people think it's overpowering or very rich or bitter. I often get this, dark chocolate's bitter. It doesn't need to be. Dark chocolate, if it's bitter, it's generally because it's not been made so well, or it's just the process, or certain elements may have been slowed down, so the chocolate may not have been conched for very long, which is a smooth refining of the chocolate. Or a poorer quality of cocoa bean, for example. Different countries have different cocoa, and different cocoa has primarily 3 main varieties, which are Forastero, Trinitario and Criollo, and then there's many different hybrids of that cocoa, so each one lends itself to different flavours. So a West African cocoa may be really rich and earthy or nutty flavours, whereas a Madagascan cocoa tends to lend itself on slightly more acidic and fruity, softer notes to it. So yeah, it all stems from quality of cocoa.
I find it really interesting. I went to the Chocolate Museum in Hamburg, and they did a tour, and I don't remember half of it, but it is so involved. And what we get in the shops, as I say, you don't think about the whole process, but I think it is worth paying more. Yeah, and that applies to anything. You get what you pay for.
Absolutely.
But I think the aesthetics of yours, I think we eat
with our eyes
we
first.
Eat with our eyes. We really do. And I mean the glaze on your chocolates is just so pretty. You almost don't want to eat them, bite into them, because they're so pretty. You don't want to spoil them. But I think it is. We definitely eat with our eyes, and to be able to get a box of chocolates through the post, for me, I was like, this, honestly, I thought all my Christmases had come at once. It doesn't seem like a big thing, but it actually is. It's really special. It's about treating yourself as well, or
exactly,
as you say, a great present for somebody as well.
Absolutely. I try to keep it so that it is a little bit unique, something that you can't just pick up off a shop shelf. Retail has become just amazingly clever at what things that can be produced on huge big scale. I can't compete with that, and I don't try to compete with that, but it's trying to give people just something that is handmade in small quantities, that's really super fresh. A big store wouldn't be able to have something like this sitting on their shelf because of the control and
Yeah.
everything. Whereas in a smaller environment, I can control all of that. So people can get chocolates literally as if they'd been made the day before, and that's what happens. My box gets made and it's packaged a day or 2 days later, and you've got the freshest chocolate. It's you really can't get it very easily any fresher.
And I also think it's really important to support small businesses. I do think, that this country was made on, the sort of the retail industry started with small businesses, small independent businesses, and obviously the retail industry is huge now, and it's an absolute juggernaut. But I think it's really important if we remember that small businesses are where it's at, and it's wonderful to support, to support your business. The taste of the Slim meringue chocolate is just not going away.
Going.
So it's still going, and that's why it's good chocolate. And Chris and I have been sampling the delights of her gorgeous chocolates, the lemon meringue. We've both Chris ate it in a very different way to me. I ate it very delicately, and he just put the whole thing in his mouth. Typical bloke, but the result was the same, just divine. So talk us through the workshops, because that's how you make your living, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the workshops are great fun, and it's basically for anyone who has an interest in chocolate. So they can be from schools, children's parties, family get-togethers, women get-togethers, hen parties. What have I not listed? Anything really goes. And when you come along, it's roughly 2 to 2.5 hours. I have some different modules, because I run them, some from our home kitchen, and others I go to different venues. So a couple of weeks ago, for instance, I was at the Swan at Salford, and then other times I can be in somebody's office and convert that into a little chocolate kitchen, and different hotels. But once you've been for a couple of hours, we get to make a chocolate ganache, which is the base of a chocolate truffle. Everybody gets to pipe their own. You learn, you end up with a box like this, is what you go home from. So I teach everybody the different techniques involved. So this is quite a random kind of packed mix box. But
sorry, that one, how have you done that? That is just divine.
Yeah, so these are chocolate transfers, so it's all magical how it works, and it's just learning the techniques of how to use them. So if anybody's, you've seen a box like this probably in Waitrose, John Lewis, or wherever, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to name different brands, but and you wonder, well, how do they get that picture on there? You come for a workshop and I'll show you how to do it all. But just how we go through the whole tempering. We temper chocolate on the table, which is always fun. People love to have a go. Can you smell it, the chocolate?
I can actually smell the quality. That is proper chocolate.
And even though these aren't the same as the cocoa buttered ones, the bonbons, you still have a nice sheen and shine to the dark chocolate, which shows you how the chocolate has been tempered perfectly. This one's like a little hedgehoggy kind of effect.
So cute.
Yeah. So I just teach different techniques, how to make a little piping bag, how to temper white chocolate, how to add inclusions. So everybody goes away with a box of 12 chocolates and a bag of chocolate truffles. And the truffles, everybody pipes out their own truffles, so we end up with some very interesting shapes as well. It's always fun. And so like in a work environment, that's great because people sometimes don't, when they're working in an office, you may not be have much time to be creative and do creative things. So it's always surprises me. You give people exactly the same ingredients and the tools to do it, and we come up with, at the end, some very different results. But yeah, everybody has fun along the way and exchanges ideas, and you're doing it like that, I'm going to do mine like that, or it's a great tool of
sort of like team building as well, because I think, as you said, a lot of people don't necessarily work in a creative environment. So, it is a great opportunity to get together and be creative, and as you said, it's interesting to see what people come up with. So absolutely so exciting. So lots of workshops. I guess Easter you're mega busy, so you can breathe a sigh of relief now.
That's it. Yeah, we're through from kind of the autumn right through to after Easter, and it was so late this year, Easter. That was also very strange. But yeah, as soon as Christmas is over, straight into Valentine's, Mother's Day, Easter. And now things slow down a little bit. Time to do the back work.
It's such a wonderful story, success story. That, you know, you've managed to juggle motherhood, but you've got this amazing business, and you're bringing so much joy to so many people's lives through the joy of chocolate. You know, and I guess to your younger self, you would never have thought this possible.
No, absolutely. My little 7-year-old who won her first cake competition, making fairy cakes. No, I didn't think I'd be in the food and sweet industry for so long, really.
It's wonderful. So tell us how we can find you on social media, to book workshops, etc.
So social media, I'm at Linny Lane Chocolatier, and that's on Instagram and Facebook. I also have my website, which is just my name, linnylane.co.uk. So all the information's on there of what's included in workshops, and how you can book. You can get in touch that way.
I'm definitely going to book a workshop, because I do think this is an amazing thing to do. So thank you so much for being such an amazing guest, and I'm definitely needing a taste of some more chocolate, because that is just salivating still. So Linny Lane has been great, and I look forward to seeing you, as I said, at a workshop as well. I've loved the show. It's been so different as always. If you'd like to be a guest on my show, it's if you message me on Instagram _NancyMK_. Next week's guest is Ruth Martin from Wolverton, Gilbert and Sullivan, talking about their next production called Patience. And I've had a great show as always. This is Nancy Stevens on the Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show, and have an amazing week.